What's your name?
My name is Ralph Willis. I go by Skip. From an infant, I spent all winters in Guilford and summers in Gorham because my grandfather had a sawmill. My father needed work in the summers. School teachers didn't get paid, so we came to Gorham for June, July, August. First grade through ninth grade in Guilford.
And what was Guilford and Gorham like back then compared to what it is now?
Guilford has not changed a ton. It was 1,200-ish people. It was primarily a mill town. There was a woolen mill. There was a mill that made tongue depressors and toothpicks, and there was one mill that made wooden spools for knitting, and that was everybody else in Guilford, except those that worked in the mill, worked in the woods. It was a woods.
So was 1,200 not much for back then?
It's a small town.
Yeah.
It's a small town.
How big was Gorham back in the 40s when you were a child?
A little bit bigger than Guilford, but not by much. Maybe 2,000, something in that range.
Did all towns in Maine have the same sort of feel back then?
Yes, there were a few cities, Portland, Augusta, Lewiston, Auburn, Bangor, and that was it for cities. My extended family was in Gorham.
So you consider that your childhood?
I do, I really do, yeah.
Yeah. So the Willises have been in Gorham for a long time.
For generations.
When you were young, the farm was like bustling, right?
The sawmill portion of it was bustling, yes. It was. There were maybe 10 men there every day.
Would you say that it started going down when could they just like not compete with larger businesses that were producing a lot more wood? Or?
My grandfather got too old to be involved on a day-to-day basis. When my dad and my uncle, my dad's brother, split the property up, my dad chose the farm and Fred chose other areas and activities because he already had a farm of his own. And my dad used the sawmill after my grandfather was gone, after he died and was no longer at the property. My dad used the sawmill to custom saw lumber for camp development, summer camp development in Raymond. But we would bring in a load of pine logs and saw them and put them on the truck and leave, and shut the mill down and go to work and not come back for a day or two or three or four. So the mill was there for us to use, but it was just my father and I.
What did your father do with the farm after he took it over when you left for college?
He did building moving and was still heavily involved in Raymond Cape property development up there. So he was up there bulldozing and logging. He never farmed, and he never ran the mill full time. The mill was still operational, and we occasionally brought logs home from Raymond Cape, sawed them in the mill brought them home at night, sawed them in the morning, and took them right back and nailed them right into a camp in the afternoon.
Your father started moving buildings as soon as you left for college or right before you left?
He started moving he had always participated. My grandfather moved buildings, great-grandfather moved buildings. He had always participated some in building moving, but he had never done it for a living. And until Freeman Richardson decided to retire and started giving my father's name to folks on the phone that called on the phone and wanted buildings moved. So my father was dumped into building moving without knowing what was happening. The phone started ringing off the hook for buildings to be moved. And so he went to Freeman Richardson and bought a little bit of Freeman's equipment and then started
Yep.
moving buildings every day.
So your father was like a multi-talented guy. I mean, he was
Yes.
a teacher.
That's right.
He
He
did some mill work. He was a handyman. He did building
Bull-
moving.
building, moving, bulldozing, digging,
When did he pass
blasting.
away?
blasting. Did a lot of
Like
blasting.
blasting rock.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
You went to Orono for engineering,
right.
and you graduated. And you immediately went to Boston.
That's right.
So at what point did you marry Mammy?
I went home with a friend for the weekend to Milo, just for lack of nothing better to do, and went to a high school dance in McManny. Between junior and senior years, in the summer between junior and senior year, so my senior year at Orono, Mammy and I were married.
You moved right to Boston.
Right, went to work for Polaroid.
The camera people. Right?
Yes.
That was a pretty good job for a young guy.
That was the highest paying job offered to the graduating seniors at Orono in 1960.
How many kids do you have?
We have 4. Diana, Jeffrey, Janet, Laurie.
And they're pretty spread apart age-wise, just like you
Yes.
and your brothers and sisters.
Yes, Diana and Jeff are close together. Janet and Laurie are close together, but there's a big spread between Jeff and Janet.
How long were you in Boston for?
12 years. We went to Boston with the idea of building a grub stake and coming back. And Boston area was a lousy place for little kids to grow up in. It was in your face and rude,
Yeah.
and
So you just wanted to.
we wanted to get the kids back to Maine.
So you moved back to Gorham at that point.
72.
Yeah. And within eyeshot of the farm.
Yes,
So when you got back, did you come back specifically to do building moving?
yes, I did.
Okay.
I came back. Day one, I was down Monday morning to start learning how to move buildings. I discussed that with him in the winter before I left Polaroid and moved back. A huge amount of my work was lifting up what was a summer camp today and putting it down and make it as a year-round house 3 weeks from now.
When did you take over the moving business?
1975.
So only a couple of years after you got back.
3, yes.
Yeah. And your dad retired at that point?
Yes,
So you ran the moving business for over a decade.
yes. I shut the moving company down because I was too ill with diabetes to keep doing all the heavy lifting and digging.
And when did you get diagnosed with diabetes?
Age 34,
Yeah.
which was only a few years after I came back, just a couple of years after I came back from Massachusetts. So I moved buildings with full type 1 diabetes for many years.
Even though you had mostly retired when I was growing up, you were still working at the shop every day
Yes.
doing
Yes,
things for people,
yes,
helping the family out, helping
Yes.
random people out.
Yep.
I mean, you're probably one of the hardest workers I know. And you were done working when I was old enough to remember things, so you must have been an even harder worker when you actually were working.
I could lug 2 jacks then, now I can't lug 1.
No.
So, is it tough, like seeing it, like fade away slowly?
Not so much. I saw it in its heyday when I was 8, 9, 10,
Yep.
11, 12, and then I've seen it slowly decline. The mill stopped being used, eventually being sold and hauled away. Somebody bought all the mill equipment to use for something else and loaded it up and hauled it away.
But I mean, as we talked about when we were out there, at this point, it's just there's one building left standing besides the actual house part of the farm.
Yes, and those buildings were old and teetery when I was 10 years old, and they just hung in and hung in and hung in, and it was not a surprise to me that they went downhill, and knowing what my father was using the property for, it was not a surprise to me that he wasn't keeping 9 buildings fixed up and going. He was using the farm as equipment storage and only had the need for 1 or 2 or 3 storage spaces
Yep.
and repair shop.
How nostalgic are you for your youth on the farm?
I remember it with great joy, but I'm not one that has a lot of nostalgia. I don't dwell on how old something is or what it's being. I use it for the best purpose I can at the moment, and so the state is like that. It's serving its purpose now. It's a slightly different purpose from what it was when I was little, but
Yeah.
it's going good.
My name is Jeff Willis.
And what is your relation to Ralph Willis?
Ralph Willis is my dad. I love my dad. You know, he loved us. You could tell that he loved us dearly, all 4 of us, all 4 kids. He spent a lot of time with us, which is, you know, back in that generation, fathers didn't spend a lot of time with the kids necessarily. It was more the mom's job to be with the kids, but I just remember all the kind of special times that I was able to spend as a kid with Dad. And he does a lot of things for people without a lot of fanfare. He's very giving. Just, you know, the way that he was a role model for us as his kids and for many, many, many people. I'm just so blessed to have him as my dad, and I love him dearly.
Yeah. I bet your sisters would share that sentiment.
Yeah, I think we're all the same.
Pretty lucky.